What's going on, guys? Ricky in the Flip Lab, and today I'm going to be talking about one of the most useful tools I think you're going to need in 2022 when it comes to wholesaling and trying to double close on deals, and that is transactional funding. So recently there's been a ton of talk from realtors, wholesalers, everyone in the real estate industry as far as what's the future of wholesaling. On top of that, even if regulation doesn't stop wholesaling, what is going to happen is title companies, attorneys, sellers, they're all going to become more aware of what wholesaling is, what assignments are, and a lot of sellers, attorneys, and title companies aren't going to be cool with it. So you have to be resourceful, you have to be able to pivot, and that's where transactional funding comes into play.
Yeah. Look, pull in the spot. Ooh, watch how I drop. Believe it or not, this isn't all that I got. Yeah. They told me to rock, that's not how I rock. Now I gotta pop Madonna. Trading my traumas for commas.
You might be asking, what is transactional funding? So transactional funding is when you have a lender come in and fund 100% of the purchase from the wholesaler to the initial seller. Think of it like this. A is your initial seller. B is the wholesaler. And C is the actual end cash buyer. You have two different contracts. You have one contract between the initial seller of the property and the wholesaler. Then the wholesaler goes and finds an end cash buyer, and then there's a contract between the end cash buyer and the wholesaler. So what transactional funding does is it funds that first purchase between the seller and the wholesaler. Now, typically how an assignment fee would work is just there's a seller, a wholesaler, and an end buyer, and the end buyer actually closes on the purchase, and the wholesaler just makes a fee in the middle. So what's great about assignments is it's like literally no risk. There's no cost involved. So if you have a contract at 110 with your end buyer and at 100,000 with your seller, if you're assigning that deal, you're going to walk away with $10,000. Now, if you transactional fund that deal, you're going to walk away with a lot less. Why? Because with transactional lending, there's fees involved. So you're going to have to pay closing costs, which are going to be a couple $1,000s. You're also going to have to pay the transactional fund fee, which typically transactional funding is between 1 to 3%. So let's do a quick example. Let's say that you're buying a property for $200,000 that you got under contract from the seller. And you know that's a good deal because you found an end buyer who's willing to pay $220 for that property. So like I was saying, typically an assignment fee, you would make $20K, but let's see how much you would make if you use transactional funding. And let's say the transactional lender charges you 2% of the purchase price and your closing costs are about $3,000 total. So 2% of 200,000, that's $4,000 bucks. And then you add on the $3,000 on top of that, that's $7,000 in just fees that you're gonna have to pay at closing. So you might be asking yourself, why in the hell would you ever use transactional funding over just wholesaling a deal? So there's really only two main reasons why you would use transactional funding for a double close. Reason number one, and the most common one, is the assignment fee is blocked on the contract between you, the wholesaler, and the seller. So there could be a lot of different reasons why assignment is blocked. As simple as sellers don't like assignment fees. Maybe they heard that wholesalers don't close on contracts. It could be attorneys. It could be title companies sometimes do not allow assignment fees on their transactions. Also, if you're dealing with REO, bank-owned properties, or a lot of hedge funds, they also won't buy deals that have assignment fees attached to them. And as we're in 2022, more and more states I see are starting to block assignment fees due to the NAR and realtors complaining about what wholesalers are doing and disrupting their industry. Reason number two why you wouldn't use an assignment contract is other people looking in your pockets as far as how big that assignment fee would be. So in our example, let's say $200,000 purchase price, but let's say you found an end buyer at $300,000 and you found a smoking deal. You're about to make $100,000 and you don't even have to touch the property. In that scenario, you might not want the seller or the buyer or both of them to see that you're making $100,000. Trust me, I've wholesaled and flipped for a long time. Me personally as an end buyer, I don't care how much money as a wholesaler you're making. If you make $100,000 assignment fee, Good, great. That just means you're probably going to spend more money on marketing. You're going to end up selling me more deals in the future. But unfortunately, a lot of people in our industry and a lot of sellers, a lot of buyers, they don't feel the same way. They are looking in your pockets. And if they see typically an assignment fee over $20K, there's a lot of buyers out there who are going to have issues with it. There's a lot of sellers out there who are also going to have issues with it. So in this case, especially on deals where there's a big spread, it almost makes sense to pay maybe $5,000 or $7,000 to double close on a deal and use transactional funding because it's just more secure, less things could go wrong. And like I said, no one's looking in your pockets. When you do a double close, even if it's a same day double close, like the transactional funding that we offer has to be same day. It's literally 5 minutes apart from each other, and it just helps you get the deal done. With guys, on deals with big spreads, the most important thing is just getting the deal closed. So I even recommend using transactional funding just as a more secure way of closing those big rips. And in my opinion, I think when you use transactional funding, which makes you the actual buyer, I think when you go into negotiations and you're talking with sellers and you're dealing with attorneys and realtors, I think it just gives you a lot more confidence with how you're speaking. Let's be honest, most people who are wholesaling, sometimes they're walking a slippery slope in some gray area as far as they're stating that they're the buyer, but they're not really the buyer. They're someone's partner. So a lot of the times wholesalers can't go into seller appointments or seller negotiations the way I typically do. We don't really wholesale many deals. So almost every time I'm talking to sellers, I am talking about my funds. I am closing on it. That extra confidence and security that I give sellers, a lot of the times might be the reason why they choose me over a wholesaler. I do believe as well, throughout my experience of buying deals and wholesaling deals, that when you go in as the actual end buyer, which you are considered that when you use transactional funding, that you're gonna be in an upper hand position to close those deals and lock them up with sellers. Now, there's a few things that you have to be careful with when using transactional funding and trying to do a double close, and that's a few things. One, in order to do this, you need 3 things to happen. You need to have 2 contracts. So like I said, you need the A to B contract and the B to C contract, both at a title company that knows what they're doing as far as the same day double close. 2, you need to have the end buyer's funds in with title the day of closing. Meaning me as a transactional funder, I am only going to fund on your deal once I confirm with the title company that the end buyer's funds are already there, because then it virtually makes no risk for me besides possibly a bad wire, disputes, a bad title company. So there are risks involved with me as the lender, but I'm only going to lend on a deal like this with a same day double close with no paperwork, no qualifications, if I know that the end buyer's cash funds are there with title. And 3, it has to be the same day. So the closings can't happen a week apart. So like some hedge funds, for instance, they might want to do a double close, but they need 30-day grace periods. That's not going to work with a lot of transactional lenders. It needs to be the same day. So if it's the same day, you have the 2 contracts and the end buyer's funds are in with closing, we'll fund those deals all day at Flip Lab Capital between 1% to 3% of the purchase price, and then you have to pay the closing costs. So that end buyer is super important when it comes to these transactional funding deals. So things to do to make sure that that end buyer shows up with his cash the day of closing is 1, use legit buyers, guys. I know the new sexy thing to max out every price on all your wholesale fees is to just shoot deals out to Facebook, get random people off email blasts and try to sell it to them. But in these tight situations, I would recommend using your go-to buyer, someone around town, someone in your local area that you know is a for sure closer. Is put down a big earnest money deposit that's non-refundable, meaning that the end buyer, that he has to put $5,000, $10,000 down at title company as a non-refundable deposit just in case he doesn't show up to perform. Most legit buyers, if they like the deal, they'll have no problem doing that. Ask that and require that from your end buyers when you're dealing with these transactional funding same day double closes. So guys, if you have any questions or you need funding for your double closes, hit me up on Instagram at realestatericky_. Also check out our website, thefliplab.com. Hit on the link for Flip Lab Capital, and we'll go over some terms and conditions there, guys. If you guys haven't already, please subscribe to the Flip Lab on YouTube. We have more podcasts coming. We have more videos like this coming and a lot more on the way. Until next time, guys.